Nebuchadnezzar. The story of a king transformed into a beast. In the heart of ancient history, filled with warriors and conquerors, a towering figure from Babylon stands out: King Nebuchadnezzar. His rise to power was marked by military victories and architectural splendors, as well as a monumental pride that challenged the heavens themselves. Here, at the intersection of greatness and arrogance, one of the Bible's most peculiar and astonishing stories takes shape. Today, we will delve into this intriguing tale that defies understanding. Why, after all, would a God who yearns for justice and humility transform a powerful king into a mere animal? This episode is not just about punishment. It is an exploration of redemption, divine power, and the eternal struggle between human ego and true greatness. Nebuchadnezzar was no ordinary king. Under his command, Babylon reached the zenith of its glory, boasting wonders such as the Hanging Gardens, said to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But what happens when absolute power meets absolute vulnerability? How would a king, accustomed to being almost a god among men, react to being reduced to the condition of a beast? As we explore this transformation, we will relive a biblical moment, uncovering the layers of a profound teaching about human nature and the sovereignty of God. What does this tale teach us about power, humility, and the recognition of our own limitations? And even more intriguingly, what were the events and decisions that led to such dramatic and unusual divine punishment? Stay with us until the end, as we dive deep into ancient texts, uncovering fascinating and little-known details of this story. Unveil the mysteries of a transformation that goes beyond the physical, entering the realm of the spiritual and symbolic. Why was a king transformed into an animal? The answer promises not only to surprise, but also to offer valuable lessons about the balance between power and humility. Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps the most famous of the Babylonian monarchs, began his journey to the throne with feats that would shape the destiny of an empire and the course of ancient history. Rising to power after the death of his father, Nabopolassar, he inherited a kingdom already on the rise, ready to expand its borders. His reign was marked by a series of military campaigns that would consolidate his power and expand his empire to Egypt. Nebuchadnezzar was not just a warrior. He was a visionary, transforming Babylon into one of the most splendid cities of the ancient world. Among his achievements, the Hanging Gardens stand out as a marvel of engineering and a symbol of his love for his wife, Amytas of Media, who longed for the verdant mountains of her homeland. However, this grandeur did not come without costs. While Nebuchadnezzar built his city of wonders, he also constructed a monumental ego. The city of Babylon, with its imposing walls and majestic gates, began to be seen not just as a center of government, but as a testament to the king's divine power. The king's pride, inflated by his conquests and architectural achievements, began to cloud his judgment. He saw himself as an earthly leader, almost a divine being, whose actions were beyond mortal scrutiny. This was a period marked by opulent feasts and displays of wealth that would shock the ancient world. However, this deification would raise questions about the limits of human power and the true source of authority. The turning point came with a mysterious dream that disturbed the king's sleep and signaled the beginning of a series of events that would test his understanding of power and providence. The dream was enigmatic and disturbing, filled with symbolic images that none of the court's wise men could interpret. It was an omen, a divine warning that could not be ignored, but its message remained shrouded in mystery. This dream, laden with hidden meanings, would mark the beginning of a journey to decipher a divine enigma, as well as to confront the true nature of power and humility. Nebuchadnezzar would find himself at a crossroads, with choices that would define his legacy and the permanence of his empire. The need to understand this dream and its implications would lead the king to seek among his counselors someone capable of unraveling the secrets of the gods. And it is here that a key character enters the scene: Daniel, a young captive Jew with the extraordinary ability to interpret dreams. The meeting of these two characters would not only change the course of Nebuchadnezzar's life, but also reveal profound lessons about the nature of divine and human power. In the midst of his reign's glory, a restless night brought Nebuchadnezzar face to face with visions that would deeply stir his spirit. In his dream, a colossal statue made up of various metals, gold head, silver chest and arms, bronze belly and thighs, iron legs and feet mixed with iron and clay, stood before him. Suddenly, a rock cut out, not by human hands, struck the statue with devastating force, completely shattering it, reducing it to nothing more than dust carried away by the wind. This dream, filled with mysterious symbols, cast a shadow of doubt over the invincibility and eternity of the empire that Nebuchadnezzar so prided himself on. Despite being surrounded by wise men and diviners, the interpretation of the dream remained elusive for the king's counselors. Nebuchadnezzar's frustration grew as each interpretation failed to calm his restless spirit. The king's anxiety was not just about understanding the dream, but about the disturbing sensation that something fundamental was about to change, that the control he thought he had over his destiny might be an illusion. The court of Nebuchadnezzar was enveloped in palpable tension when Daniel presented himself to reveal the interpretation of the dream that troubled the king. Daniel, a young Jewish slave endowed with extraordinary wisdom and faith, was brought before the king. The young man, although captive, possessed an aura of serenity and confidence that emanated not from his earthly circumstances, but from his unwavering faith in the God of Israel. Known among the captives for his ability to interpret dreams, he represented Nebuchadnezzar's last hope of unraveling the mysteries that tormented him. His presence vividly contrasted with the anxiety of the wise men and magicians of the court, whose previous interpretations had failed. With a calmness that set him apart from the rest, Daniel asked for time to pray and seek divine revelation that would enable him to correctly interpret the king's dream. After a night of fervent prayers, the answer came to Daniel not only as an interpretation, but as a detailed prophecy revealed by God. With a firm voice, Daniel began to unravel the meaning of the dream. He explained that the magnificent and terrifying statue symbolized a line of empires, starting with the golden and magnificent reign of Nebuchadnezzar, represented by the head of gold. The king, upon hearing his empire described as the most glorious of all, initially felt a wave of pride. However, Daniel continued, describing the subsequent realms represented by silver, bronze, iron, and finally by the fragile clay mixed with iron. The rock that destroyed the statue symbolized a divine kingdom, eternal and unshakable, that would be established by God and would never be destroyed or given to another people. It was a direct and powerful message. However grandiose Nebuchadnezzar's empire was, it was only temporary, and true power resided not in earthly realms but in the heavenly domain. Nebuchadnezzar's reaction was a mix of relief and fear. Relieved to finally understand the dream, but fearful of the implications of this revelation. He recognized Daniel's uniqueness and divine gift, prostrating himself and ordering that gifts and honors be bestowed upon him. However, even with the truth revealed, the seed of arrogance still germinated in the king's heart. He began to question how and if the destiny revealed in his dream could be altered. At this moment of reflection and uncertainty, Nebuchadnezzar faced a crucial choice: to accept the sovereignty of God revealed in the dream, or to continue to see himself as the supreme master of his destiny. The decision he would make next would define his character and seal the fate of his empire. This choice, laden with consequences, would lead the king to a new phase of his reign, marked both by greatness and by a vertiginous fall. The revelation that his empire, though grandiose, would eventually be replaced by others, less noble but still powerful, began to shake the king. The greatest shock came with the explanation of the rock, which Daniel identified not as a human kingdom but as a kingdom established by God himself, which would destroy and supplant all earthly empires to never be destroyed. Daniel's courage in proclaiming such a truth was remarkable, as he not only interpreted the dream but also announced the impermanence of the king's power in the face of the eternal dominion of the heavens. The atmosphere in the room became even more charged when Daniel, boldly, warned Nebuchadnezzar about the sovereignty and judgment of God, reminding the king that it is heaven that establishes the realms of men. Nebuchadnezzar, confronted with the mortality of his reign and the inexorable destiny that awaited him, was taken by a complex mix of emotions. He admired Daniel's courage and faith, but also internally struggled with what the prophecy meant for his legacy and his perception of divinity. After all, if a God whom he did not worship could foresee and determine the end of his grand empire, what did this say about his own power? The king's response to this audacious prediction oscillated between acceptance and resistance. Initially, he chose to honor Daniel, promoting him to a high-ranking position and recognizing the power of Daniel's God. However, the seeds of doubt and challenge were already planted in his heart. He began to ponder ways to alter or challenge the destiny revealed, a decision that would eventually lead to actions that tested the limits of his faith and sovereignty. The rise of Daniel to a position of influence and Nebuchadnezzar's initial reaction to honor the God of Israel seemed to point to a period of peace and recognition of divine sovereignty. However, the depths of the human heart and the allure of earthly power are complex and unpredictable. How would Nebuchadnezzar deal with this revelation in the long run? And what measures would he take to solidify his legacy against the tide of history prophesied by Daniel? These questions would lead to a series of events that would challenge both the king and the prophet in unexpected ways. Despite the signs and warnings revealed by Daniel, the human nature of Nebuchadnezzar proved reluctant to fully surrender to divine power. The prophetic revelation that his realm would be succeeded by others and eventually replaced by an eternal kingdom planted a seed of defiance in his heart. Instead of humbly accepting the transience of his power, the king found himself increasingly consumed by the desire to solidify his legacy and demonstrate his independence from the prophesied destiny. As the years passed, Babylon flourished even more under his command, strengthening Nebuchadnezzar's conviction that he could defy the predictions. Under his order, the city expanded, displaying architectural wonders and advanced engineering that seemed to challenge the heavens themselves. Amid this scene of splendor and excess, Nebuchadnezzar walked the terraces of his palace, observing the vastness of Babylon, and his heart filled with pride. It was during one of these moments of self-indulgent reflection that Nebuchadnezzar uttered the fateful words, "Is not this the great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty?" This statement was not just an expression of pride. It was a direct challenge to the divine warning he had received through the dream interpreted by Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar's arrogance did not go unnoticed. The heavens, which had so far observed the king's behavior with patience, decided to intervene. The dramatic change in Nebuchadnezzar's destiny began with a celestial proclamation that echoed with divine authority through the clouds. The Bible reports that as he boasted of his accomplishments and challenged the limits of his mortality, heaven intervened decisively and severely. The audible and clear voice announced that his realm would be taken from him, and he would lose his humanity, a punishment that reflected the gravity of his pride and the need for a profound lesson in humility. It was a direct and immediate response to his presumption, marking the beginning of an extraordinary transformation. This divine decree was not merely symbolic. Nebuchadnezzar was struck by a madness that removed him from the throne and his humanity. The biblical text describes how human understanding left him, and he was driven out of civilization, beginning an existence among the beasts of the field. This metamorphosis was both physical and mental. He began to eat grass like an ox, his body was bathed in the dew of heaven, his hair grew uncontrollably, and his nails resembled the claws of birds. This period of decline, in addition to being a punishment, was also a process of purification and humiliation, aimed at teaching the king the true source of his authority and the ephemeral nature of human power. Nebuchadnezzar's transformation serves as a powerful symbol of the consequences of pride and arrogance. He, who once looked upon his city and proclaimed himself almost a god, now could not even recognize himself as a man. Nebuchadnezzar had to face the reality that no success or earthly construction could guarantee the immortality of his kingdom or his name. The irony of this transformation is sharp. He who had risen so high was brought to the lowest of states, vividly reminding us of the volatility of human power and the unquestionable sovereignty of God. How would Nebuchadnezzar respond to this humiliation? Would redemption be possible for a king who had been reduced to the lowest condition among men? Nebuchadnezzar's journey through madness and the eventual restoration of his sanity and kingdom would reveal profound lessons about power, humility, and divine mercy. During this period, Great Babylon, the jewel of Nebuchadnezzar's empire, continued to prosper, but without its king. This was an additional testament to the divine message that no individual is indispensable, and that the realms of the earth will continue under God's governance, regardless of the presence or absence of any human leader. For observers and courtiers, Nebuchadnezzar's situation was a disturbing spectacle and a severe warning. The king who had ruled with an iron fist now wandered barefoot and disoriented, a sight that defied understanding and instigated fear about the power of God and the dangers of pride. While Nebuchadnezzar lived among the beasts, deep reflection must have occurred. The solitude of the wilderness, in sharp contrast with the opulence of his palace, provided an environment where the only possible path was introspection. What did he think as he looked at the starry sky, far from the luxuries of his throne? Eventually, this period of animal seclusion would culminate in a moment of clarity and possible redemption. The extreme humiliation of Nebuchadnezzar was intended to teach him a definitive lesson about who truly controls the fate of realms and men. But how would such a proud king react to being returned to his human form? Could a true transformation of character occur after such a radical experience? This intriguing question leads us to the next phase of Nebuchadnezzar's story, where we will explore his journey back to humanity and the lessons he may have learned through his extraordinary experience. Nebuchadnezzar's exile among the field beasts was not just a punishment, but a powerful initiation into humility. Stripped of his throne, his royal garments, and his human sanity, the king was forced to confront the rawest essence of his existence. He, who once commanded armies and built wonders, now found himself reduced to a primitive state, leveled with the animals surrounding him. This stripped-down experience revealed layers of his character that even he might not have anticipated. The grass he chewed was not simply food. It was a symbol of his new reality, where basic needs replaced the immeasurable luxuries of Babylon. Each day spent under the open sky, each night endured under the cold dew, each moment lived without the comfort of civilization, served to dismantle the arrogance that once defined Nebuchadnezzar. These days among the animals were both a purge of his pride and a rediscovery of his fundamental humanity, distant from the trappings of power. During this time, the kingdom of Babylon continued, operating under the direction of temporary regents, or perhaps by the invisible hand of divine providence. The king's absence demonstrated that no man, however powerful, was essential to the march of life and events. This lesson, though humbling, was vital for Nebuchadnezzar's transformation. It served as a cruel mirror, reflecting the truth that the world did not revolve around his will. Biblical and historical accounts do not detail Nebuchadnezzar's internal reflections during this period, but it is reasonable to speculate that introspection and self-assessment were intense. Direct coexistence with nature and animals, beings who lived devoid of ambitions for power or pride, must have been a stark contrast to the life he had led. Gradually, the barriers between the once king and the beast were dissolving. Nebuchadnezzar, observing the simplicity of natural cycles, may have begun to understand the smallness of his desires and achievements in the face of the vastness of the universe and divine eternity. This was a king who was learning that true power is not manifested in dominion and control, but in the ability to understand and respect the natural and divine order. As the days turned into months, and the months perhaps into years, something within Nebuchadnezzar irrevocably changed. The pride and arrogance that had caused his fall gave way to a deeper understanding of himself as a fragment within a larger design, dependent on divine grace and mercy for any measure of true greatness. This period of extreme humility adjusted his perception of power, setting the stage for an eventual return, not as a despot, but as a transformed ruler. What would be the nature of this transformation? And how could a man who had lived among the animals reassume the throne of one of the greatest civilizations of antiquity? The answers to these questions would define Nebuchadnezzar's final legacy and provide an epic conclusion to this journey of fall and redemption. After 7 years of a life that seemed more like a feverish dream than reality, Nebuchadnezzar found himself on the threshold of a profound transformation. Isolated from the throne and society, living like an animal among the animals, the stripped-down king had ample time and reason to ponder the truths of life, power, and his own existence. One morning, as dawn painted the sky in soft hues, Nebuchadnezzar, with his beard and tangled hair covering him like a mantle of feathers, lifted his eyes to the heavens. This simple act, unlike all the other moments of looking down or inward, marked a significant change. Perhaps for the first time since his transformation, he truly saw something beyond himself. It was at this moment, the scriptures say, that his reason began to return. The king, who had lost everything to understand everything, began to recognize the sovereignty of God with a clarity that only the deepest humility can bring. He realized that his realm, his constructions, and even his own identity were not really his, but temporary loans granted by the will of something much greater than himself. This epiphany was both a rebirth and a restoration, returning not only his sanity but also infusing a new perspective on his role and purpose. As Nebuchadnezzar regained his humanity, he also began to reassess what it meant to be a leader. The pride and arrogance that once characterized him gave way to a sense of justice and mercy he had failed to practice at the height of his power. Recognizing his second chance as a gift, he vowed to use his return to power to govern with wisdom and benevolence. In the days following his restoration, Nebuchadnezzar took concrete steps to rectify the errors of his past. He sought to correct injustices, reform laws, and improve the well-being of his people. He was no longer the king who built for his own glory, but one who built for the benefit of others. Babylon, under his renewed governance, flourished in ways that reflected these new ideals. The impact of his transformation was felt during his reign and also in future generations. Nebuchadnezzar left a legacy of redemption, showing that even those who fall the lowest can rise wiser and stronger. His story became a testimony to the capacity for change and God's mercy, teaching his subjects and history the true nature of power. The restoration of Nebuchadnezzar to the throne and to sanity is a reminder that no mistake is too great to be redeemed, and no leader is too powerful to learn to be better. How would this understanding influence the final years of his reign and the memories he would leave behind? And what final lessons would he convey, consolidating a story of fall and rise that continues to inspire today? The next part of our narrative will examine the lasting impact of his transformed governance and the conclusion of this epic of self-discovery and redemption. Restored to his throne after a period of profound humility and personal transformation, Nebuchadnezzar faced the challenge of ruling with a new perspective. He was no longer the same man who once boasted from the heights of his palaces. He had been profoundly touched by the awareness of divine sovereignty. Upon his return, his first proclamation openly acknowledged this sovereignty, publicly declaring that God's power surpassed any earthly authority and that arrogance was a sure path to humiliation. This new philosophy changed the way Nebuchadnezzar viewed himself and his role as king, as well as influencing all his policies and interactions. He initiated significant reforms that sought to adjust the power structures within Babylon, ensuring that justice and equity prevailed over the oppression and tyranny that had marked aspects of his previous reign. Nebuchadnezzar also became a fervent patron of the arts and religion, promoting Babylonian traditions and showing respect for other religious practices within his empire. This tolerance reflected his understanding that no man or culture had a monopoly on truth or divinity. Moreover, he dedicated a significant portion of his resources to improving the city's infrastructure and the well-being of his subjects. Irrigation projects, which had been neglected in favor of more grandiose monuments, were prioritized. Nebuchadnezzar understood that the true greatness of a king was not measured by the grandeur of his palaces, but by the well-being of the people he governed. His post-transformation governance was also marked by more cautious and considered diplomacy. Nebuchadnezzar, who previously rushed into conflicts and conquests, now sought peaceful alliances and agreements, understanding that sustainable relationships were more beneficial in the long run than war trophies. Internally, the transformed king implemented councils of wise men and set aside unilateral decisions. He now understood that collective wisdom could prevent the excesses that his previous absolute authority had allowed. This inclusion of diverse voices in the decision-making process not only enriched his reign, but also ensured that policies reflected a broader spectrum of needs and perspectives. In the final phases of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar often contemplated the limits of human power and the eternity of actions. He had learned that every decision a king makes echoes through time, and with this awareness, he strove to leave a legacy of wisdom and benevolence. This transformed king, who had once been humiliated to the level of beasts, now strove to ascend to the height of angels in his justice and mercy. This profound change and its repercussions are a testament to the transformative power of adversity and reflection. Nebuchadnezzar's final legacy and the lessons he left offer a narrative about growth and redemption that continues to resonate, teaching us about the capacity for change and the pursuit of true greatness. What would this legacy mean for Babylon and for the history that would follow? The next part of our story will examine the lasting impact of Nebuchadnezzar's reforms and how his vision ultimately shaped the destiny of his empire. Nebuchadnezzar's trajectory, from supreme king to beast and later to a restored and transformed monarch, encapsulates a universal truth about the ephemeral nature of human power and the inevitability of humility. His story teaches us that, regardless of the heights we reach, we are always under the jurisdiction of forces greater than ourselves. The phases of his life, from his rise to power, his dramatic fall, and subsequent redemption, shape a dramatic tale, serving as a mirror reflecting our own vulnerabilities and the sovereignty of a higher order. Nebuchadnezzar, in his pride, was able to build one of the greatest civilizations known. But it was only in his humiliation that he found true greatness, learning that genuine leadership serves the people and reveres principles that transcend the immediate and material. This powerful narrative resonates with a vital message for all of us. As we pursue success and recognition, we must not lose sight that true strength lies in our ability to recognize our limitations and learn from our mistakes. Nebuchadnezzar reminds us to always look up and recognize the true source of power and humility. We thank you for joining us on this epic journey through the life of a king whose lessons of fall and redemption serve both as a warning and an inspiration. We hope these reflections on the past help us shape a future where, even in moments of greatest power, we maintain humility and the correct perspective. This is the B-side of the Bible channel. Until next time, where we will continue to explore the stories that teach us, transform us, and inspire us.